My name is Julie, and I'm a 19-year-old art student who's spent most of her life feeling like a stranger in her own family. My parents, Donald and Martha, met in college, and their love story seemed like a fairy tale. They always spoke about their dreams of building a big, happy family. For years, they struggled with fertility, and their joy knew no bounds when I was finally born. They used to tell me how precious I was to them, how much they'd waited for me, and how I was the answer to their prayers. But as I grew up, something changed. I was always a shy, introverted child, the kind who found peace in the quiet corners of life. Drawing, painting, and reading became my comfort zones, helping me escape into a world where I felt accepted and understood. My parents tried to push me into activities that they thought would help me come out of my shell: sports, piano, even drama class. I tried, but none of them felt right. Their frustration with me grew, even if they didn't express it openly. I felt like I was disappointing them, failing to live up to an invisible standard I could never meet. Things changed even more when I was 7. Out of the blue, my mother got pregnant with my younger sister, Jennifer. It was a difficult pregnancy, and Mom had to be on bed rest for months. Dad took on the responsibility of caring for her, and, understandably, became completely absorbed in her health and the baby on the way. I stayed with my grandmother most of the time, feeling neglected and out of place in my own family. When Jennifer was finally born, my parents were overjoyed. I, too, was thrilled to have a little sister, convinced that we would be best friends and grow up sharing secrets and dreams. However, as Jennifer and I grew older, it became obvious how different we were. Jennifer was everything I wasn't: outgoing, athletic, and naturally gifted at academics. She seemed to fit perfectly into our parents' idea of what a daughter should be. My parents' admiration for her was apparent in every interaction, and it started to feel like the more they celebrated Jennifer's successes, the more my own identity faded in their eyes. While I had always struggled with social situations and sometimes even dreaded leaving the house, Jennifer was effortlessly popular and confident. She joined the soccer team, and each game became a family affair. My parents would cheer on the sidelines, bring snacks for her teammates, and invite relatives to watch her play. They were so proud of her, and it was clear she was their golden child. Meanwhile, I was fighting my own battles. Around the age of 12, I began experiencing severe anxiety. Public speaking, group presentations, and social gatherings were agonizing. My parents didn't understand and often brushed off my panic attacks as drama or accused me of seeking attention. They urged me to snap out of it and stop overreacting. The more they dismissed my anxiety, the more isolated I felt. It was as if my struggles weren't real to them, or worse, that they were somehow my fault. In the background, Jennifer's achievements continued to pile up. When she won academic awards, my parents threw her parties. When she needed help with her studies, they were there to support her every step of the way. On my 16th birthday, I received a $50 gift card to a bookstore. I was thrilled. Books had always been my sanctuary. I didn't think much of it until Jennifer's 16th birthday rolled around 3 years later. She was gifted a brand new car. It wasn't just the disparity in the gift itself that stung, it was the message it conveyed. When I asked my parents why there was such a difference, they told me Jennifer deserved it for her hard work. That was their justification, that she had somehow earned more, while I had not. This favoritism affected my relationship with Jennifer, though I tried not to let it. As young kids, we had shared a close bond. I would read her bedtime stories, listen to her talk about her day, and she trusted me with her secrets. But as we got older, a growing sense of resentment took root. Jennifer didn't intentionally flaunt her privileges, but she didn't acknowledge my struggles either. I didn't want to blame her after all. She wasn't responsible for our parents' favoritism, but it was hard not to let my bitterness seep into our interactions. Our once close bond gradually eroded, and an unspoken tension grew between us. School wasn't much easier. While Jennifer fit in effortlessly and was surrounded by friends, I felt like an outsider. My only source of true comfort was my best friend, Megan. Her family became my second home. Her parents, John and Lisa, treated me with kindness and warmth that I seldom felt at home. They supported my passion for art, attending my school exhibits and cheering me on in ways my parents never did. I spent countless weekends at their house, where I could relax without the silent pressure and judgment that awaited me at home. I could be myself around them, free from the constant comparisons to Jennifer. They were the first adults in my life who made me feel truly seen. The final breaking point came when I overheard my parents discussing Jennifer's college plans. They talked about helping her with tuition, finding a campus close to home, and even covering her living expenses. It was a stark contrast to what they had told me. I had always known that I'd be on my own financially. They'd told me they couldn't afford to support me and expected me to figure it out myself. Hearing them discuss their willingness to invest in Jennifer's future felt like a slap in the face. I confronted them, finally expressing the years of pain and frustration that had built up inside me. I wanted them to understand how deeply their favoritism had hurt me, but they were defensive, accusing me of being jealous and ungrateful. My father even said that if I had applied myself more like Jennifer, they'd be more willing to help. That comment broke something in me. I left that night, going straight to Megan's house. Her parents didn't ask questions, they simply opened their door and let me stay. For the first time, I felt like someone understood the depths of my pain without needing an explanation. I cried myself to sleep, feeling a mixture of relief and heartbreak. Leaving home was liberating but terrifying. I had just severed ties with the people I'd once thought would always be there for me. In the days that followed, my parents sent a few texts, but their tone was dismissive, as if my decision was just a phase. They demanded to know when I'd be done with my tantrum and ready to come home. The idea of returning made me feel trapped. For the first time, I felt the space to breathe, to figure out who I was without constantly comparing myself to Jennifer. Megan's family provided emotional support, but the sense of loss lingered. About a month after I left, my parents showed up unannounced at Megan's house. Megan's parents, always respectful of my boundaries, asked if I wanted to speak to them, and after some hesitation, I agreed. My mom looked devastated, with tear-streaked cheeks, while my dad appeared furious. They accused me of being ungrateful and selfish, claiming I was tearing the family apart. When I tried to explain my feelings again, they interrupted, insisting they'd done everything for me. My dad mentioned a post I'd written on Reddit about their favoritism. Jennifer had shown it to them, hoping it would help them understand my side. Instead, it felt like a betrayal, though deep down, I knew Jennifer probably had good intentions. They continued to yell, bringing up every failure and disappointment they could think of. My dad said, "We gave you everything, and this is how you repay us." Running away and airing our family's dirty laundry online? I felt tempted to retreat, to apologize, to shrink back into the role they'd always assigned me. But something in me had changed. I held firm, telling them I wasn't coming back. My dad's parting words were brutal. As they walked away, he called out, saying I was dead to them. Megan's parents held me as I cried, comforting me with words of acceptance and kindness that felt foreign but deeply needed. Jennifer reached out a few weeks later. She apologized for showing my parents the Reddit post, explaining that she thought it would help. She confided that she, too, had felt pressured to live up to the image of the perfect daughter and had felt guilty for being the favored one. She told me she'd wanted to study art, like me, but that our parents pushed her toward a real career path. Hearing this softened some of my resentment. For the first time, I realized that while our experiences were different, we were both trying to navigate the heavy expectations our parents had placed on us. The months that followed were full of emotional ups and downs, but I began to find myself. I took on a better-paying job at an art supply store and moved into a small apartment. It was nothing fancy, but it was my own space, a place where I could fill the walls with my artwork and build a life free from the shadows of my family's judgment. Megan's family continued to support me, inviting me over for dinners and helping with groceries now and then. Eventually, I received a package from my parents. Inside was a photo album filled with pictures of our family. As I flipped through it, I noticed that in almost every photo, Jennifer was the star surrounded by my parents, smiling proudly, with me often in the background. They hadn't included a letter or explanation, just the album. I wasn't sure what to make of it, but I decided to let it go. I wouldn't allow their perspective to dictate my self-worth any longer. Jennifer and I have begun rebuilding our relationship, free from the tension our parents created. She's decided to study art after all, defying their expectations. I still don't have much of a relationship with my parents, though they occasionally reach out with texts that feel distant and tentative. I don't expect an apology from them. I've accepted that I may never get one. My healing journey isn't dependent on their acknowledgement. I am learning to forgive not for their sake, but for my peace. I've surrounded myself with people who genuinely care about me, people who accept me for who I am. Megan and her family are my anchors, my chosen family. My life is finally my own, and I've begun to dream of a future where I am enough, just as I am. And as I look forward, I feel a strange sense of hope, something I hadn't felt in years. In the weeks that followed, Jennifer reached out. She was surprisingly empathetic, apologizing for showing our parents the post. She shared things I hadn't expected, how she'd felt immense pressure to be perfect, and how they'd even made her feel like she had to live her life just to avoid turning out like me. Hearing that was painful, but it also brought us closer. For the first time, we realized that while our experiences were different, we were both struggling under the same weight of our parents' expectations. In many ways, they'd trapped us both in a narrow view of what we could and couldn't be. Jennifer told me that our parents had subtly pitted us against each other without either of us fully realizing it. They had painted my love for art and introspection as weaknesses, while her outgoing nature and academic accomplishments were what they valued most. Over time, we both accepted these roles, and they shaped our identities in ways neither of us could fully control. It was incredibly healing to talk about this together, to recognize that we weren't rivals, but rather allies in an unspoken battle to be ourselves. Moving forward, I threw myself into building a life on my terms. I got a better-paying job at an art supply store and moved into my own apartment. It was small and a bit run down, but it was mine. I decorated it with my art, filling the walls with paintings that represented different parts of my journey. For the first time, I felt a sense of ownership over my life. Megan's family and I stayed close. They would visit often, bringing groceries or just stopping by to chat. Her parents even called to check in regularly, something my own parents hadn't done since the fight on Megan's lawn. Their warmth made me feel like part of their family, and each interaction with them healed another part of the wound my parents had left. In contrast, my parents' texts continued sporadically. They'd alternate between love bombing and guilt tripping, reminding me of family memories and subtly accusing me of abandoning them. Some days, I felt tempted to reach back, to try to repair the relationship. But then I'd remember the years of feeling dismissed and misunderstood. Jennifer, meanwhile, began visiting me occasionally, and we started rebuilding our bond, free from the influence of our parents. She told me how things at home had grown tense. My parents fought constantly, often blaming each other for my departure. She confided that she wanted to study art, just like me, but they insisted she pursue something practical, like business or law. Jennifer's revelation hit me hard. I knew our parents were controlling, but I hadn't fully realized the extent to which they dictated Jennifer's choices too. In their quest to create the perfect family image, they couldn't see us as individuals with our own dreams and aspirations. Jennifer told me that even though our parents favored her, she often felt just as suffocated. She admitted that she had secretly envied my independence, the freedom I'd found to explore my own path, even if it meant estranging myself from them. We shared a deep conversation about the sacrifices each of us had made to please our parents, and how, in doing so, we'd both lost parts of ourselves. The bond we were rebuilding grew stronger with every conversation, as we acknowledged the pain, the jealousy, and the love we'd both felt for each other over the years. Then, one day, I received a package from my parents. Inside was a photo album filled with pictures of our family over the years. There were vacation photos, holiday snapshots, birthdays moments where we all seemed genuinely happy. For a brief moment, I felt a familiar ache, a longing for that sense of family. But as I looked closer, I noticed something strange. In most of the photos, I was either in the background or completely absent. Jennifer was front and center, surrounded by the people who seemed to adore her. There were countless pictures of her soccer games, her school events, but none from my art shows or writing contests. It felt like my life with them had been erased, reduced to nothing more than a supporting role in Jennifer's story. I kept the album, though I didn't know why. Perhaps it was a reminder of the past I was leaving behind, or maybe it symbolized the emptiness I'd felt for so long. Either way, it solidified my decision to move forward without looking back. My grandmother, whom I hadn't spoken to in years, reached out after hearing about the situation. She surprised me by supporting my decision, expressing regret for not stepping in sooner. She told me she'd seen how I'd been treated and encouraged me to prioritize my well-being. Her validation meant more than she realized, giving me the courage to continue on this path. In the months that followed, I focused on my art, pouring my emotions into my work. I started attending community college, taking courses in graphic design, and meeting people who shared my passions. Slowly, I felt my self-worth rebuilding, unanchored from my family's expectations. For the first time, I was surrounded by people who appreciated me for who I was, rather than for who they wanted me to be. It felt liberating to be part of a community where I didn't have to prove myself constantly, where my creativity was celebrated instead of dismissed. Jennifer and I grew even closer. She finally stood up to our parents, choosing to study art. And though they weren't pleased, she insisted it was her choice. It took courage for her to make that decision, and I admired her for it. We both knew our parents wouldn't take it well, but we no longer felt the need to live by their standards. I encouraged Jennifer, reminding her that her worth wasn't defined by our parents' approval. It felt good to support her, to give her the encouragement I'd often longed for myself. For the first time in years, I felt like I had a true sister, someone who understood me, who accepted me, and who was willing to walk alongside me on this journey of self-discovery. Around this time, my art began to gain recognition. I started selling pieces at local galleries and received invitations to display my work in small exhibitions. It was surreal, watching people connect with my art, seeing them appreciate the raw emotion I'd poured into each piece. I hadn't anticipated how therapeutic it would feel to share my story in this way, to have others recognize and empathize with the struggles I'd put on canvas. This journey wasn't just about finding my voice, it was about reclaiming my identity. My parents remained a distant presence in my life. They would text me occasionally, their messages varying between expressions of love and subtle guilt trips. I still struggled with feelings of resentment and anger, and part of me craved an apology that I knew would likely never come. But over time, I realized that I didn't need their apology to heal. Forgiveness, I learned, wasn't for them, it was for me. I was letting go, piece by piece, freeing myself from the expectations and disappointments that had once defined me. Megan's family continued to be my steadfast support system. They celebrated my achievements and offered comfort on difficult days. It felt like they were my real family, the people who loved me unconditionally. Megan's parents would sometimes surprise me with small acts of kindness, like bringing me lunch at work or inviting me over for family dinners. These gestures, though simple, reminded me that I was valued, that I was deserving of love and acceptance. I no longer felt the aching void that my parents' rejection had left in my heart. In its place was a quiet, resilient hope. Now, a year later, my life feels like my own. My relationship with my parents remains strained, though they occasionally reach out. They haven't apologized, but their messages have softened. They tell me they're proud of my accomplishments and ask how I'm doing, though I'm still hesitant to fully trust their intentions. I no longer rely on their approval to feel good about myself, and I've found peace in the knowledge that I am enough, just as I am. Jennifer and I have a bond stronger than ever, built on mutual respect and understanding. We support each other in ways our parents never could, and we're creating our own definition of family. I don't know what the future holds for my relationship with my parents, but I'm hopeful. For now, I'm content to build a life that reflects who I truly am, a journey I should have started long ago, but am grateful to finally embrace. Looking back, I realized that my journey to self-acceptance was long overdue. It took years of pain, distance, and heartache, but I finally feel at peace. I have friends who are my chosen family, a career that brings me joy, and a sister who has become my ally. And most importantly, I have myself, the person I spent years hiding, waiting to be accepted. I am finally free, and that freedom is a gift I will never take for granted.